Why is China the country that is taking over the video game industry right now, especially within the West? For so long, China has been the country that was associated with cheap or knockoff products that nobody in Western countries ever took seriously. We often mocked their games because they often felt like the Temu or AliExpress versions of games that we already had here. While we have League of Legends, they've got Mobile Legends Bang Bang, something totally different and original. It definitely doesn't take inspiration from any other games on the market. Although Chinese AAA gaming isn't as big as it is in the West, that doesn't mean that they don't play any video games at all. They just prefer a different type of game, mobile games. In fact, their mobile game market is one of the largest ones in the world, grossing at around $41 billion domestically. They are absolutely killing it right now in the mobile games division, which allowed them to set their sights to overseas markets, mixing in AAA level quality with what they already had, and with that they were able to completely take over the world. Games like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail were massive successes globally, so much so to the point where they were one of the highest grossing games of all time. Titles like these that become insanely popular in Western markets pave the way for other games like it to be brought over and enjoyed by all audiences. Now they're not only dominating mobile games, but they're slowly creeping up to the same level as Western AAA games as well. Titles like Black Myth Wukong, Wu Chang Fallen Dynasty, and the upcoming Phantom Blade Zero all massively boost the public perception of Chinese games, proving that they too can stand with the titans. Black Myth Wukong alone sold over 10 million copies across all platforms in just 3 days, which is crazy for a game about a completely foreign mythology that most people here aren't too familiar with. And it's easy to see why these titles totally mog their competition. They have incredibly fun gameplay while also being the same level of quality as any other AAA game out right now. But what are the actual reasons why China has taken a chokehold over the video game industry all over the world? Well, the thing is that China has always been a big player within gaming for a long time now, even before they went full force into game development. You see, for many years now, huge investment corporations like Tencent have had their hands in many gaming companies like Ubisoft, Riot, and Epic Games, just to name a few. In fact, they are one of, if not the largest investor in gaming right now. It's no wonder why these AAA studios have billions upon billions of dollars of funding going into overseas game development. China has always had their eyes set on the Western gaming industry from the very beginning. It's just that they preferred a more behind the curtains approach. For the most part, Chinese games just stayed over there because a majority of them were mobile pay-to-win gacha slop that looked like one of those crappy Raid Shadow Legends clickbait ads, so obviously that didn't interest any international markets. It was only up until a couple of years ago where they actually started to take game development more seriously. One of the first games to really break into overseas markets was, like I mentioned earlier, Genshin Impact, which combined the accessibility of mobile games with AAA level quality. This level of unprecedented success inspired many other studios to follow suit and make their own versions of it. Same with what happened when Black Myth Wukong absolutely broke the world. Now people are realizing that these guys can actually make decent games if they tried. The only problem is that titles from them are usually heavily pay to win, but that's a whole different discussion for another day. It's not just that Chinese games are good though, because by themselves they're great, don't get me wrong. However, that isn't the only reason why they're taking over Western markets, because it unironically feels like they're, dare I say, better than a lot of the titles that we have over here right now. Many people believe that modern AAA gaming has gone severely downhill within the past decade or so due to a variety of reasons. The first one being that a lot of them are simply unfun to play. The thing that separates Western AAA developers and Eastern ones in general is that the former prioritizes making their games for all audiences to enjoy. And what happens is that they end up having to downgrade or dumb down their gameplay so that nobody would feel left out. They cast the widest net possible, meaning that they want to try to appeal to everybody. The problem with this is that it's impossible to please everybody. Obviously, you could have a major consensus on whether a game is good or not, but it's never 100%. Video games can't be like Swiss Army knives and have a little something for everybody. There's just not enough time or resources in the world to do that. And it feels like Western developers today are always trying to chase that impossible goal of being a game for 100% of gamers, but that's just simply not feasible. Meanwhile, Chinese and Eastern devs in general acknowledge this fact and try to develop their game for one core audience of people. Like how Wukong was made for Souls-like fans, Marvel Rivals was made for casual players, and Genshin was made for femboys. Every single title has its own demographic of people that they target, and because of that, the developers are able to focus on creating more refined gameplay to suit those needs, and I think this is the correct mindset to have. That's why the best games of all time from the West are ones that also cater to a certain group of people, like Red Dead Redemption 2 caters to young men, Baldur's Gate 3 to D&D players, and World of Warcraft to 30-year-old balding men. It's how the market worked, and that's how it's always worked forever since the inception of gaming. What I think is also the reason why China is taking over the video game industry right now is because they more often than not listen to their fan base, which unfortunately can't be said for a lot of Western developers right now, especially ones coming from big AAA companies. The players would express their discontent about something in the game, and a lot of the time the devs would either dismiss their concerns or outright start being combative with them. Remember when Starfield released a while back? Some people were showing their disappointment of the game in the Steam forums, saying how it wasn't what they had expected. And most of them weren't rude or anything, they were just average players who were expressing their concerns of the game and the direction that Bethesda was going in. So you would think that maybe the devs at Bethesda would take this criticism to heart and strive to make a better experience for the consumers, right? Well, no, because some rogue employee of the company, probably some intern, took it upon themselves to personally go to the Steam forums and reply to the negative reviews, saying how their opinions were wrong and that the design choices were actually good. Like, in response to someone saying that the planets feel empty and boring, the Bethesda employee retorted that when the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there, but they certainly weren't bored. First of all, what kind of logic is that? Going to the moon in a video game is the same as going in real life? And secondly, why are you even arguing with random people in a Steam review page? Just take the criticism and relay it to the main development team like every other studio. Why do they feel the need to go down in the trenches and fight tooth and nail to defend their title? I feel like there's this growing resentment between gamers and game developers over here in the West, where they are constantly at odds with each other, and people have just become even more jaded and bitter because of it. There are even some game devs who straight up hate gamers because of how they're constantly butting heads with them, like a couple going through a divorce court. Meanwhile, whenever the players start complaining on an Eastern-made game, the devs apologize profusely for the poor experience, promising to fix their issues in the near future with the utmost respect. They don't go on to argue with the players on any forum pages or social media, they don't make snarky remarks about them on any live streams, they just say sorry and then work on making improvements to the game. For example, Marvel Rivals has been able to see tons of success very early on because they had listened to every concern that their players had and made sure that they are on top of their priority list, usually addressing them by their next dev update. Something that, for some reason, took Blizzard years to do with Overwatch because they didn't think it was important enough to address, which is what led to its decline for a couple of years. Funnily enough though, this isn't a real problem for smaller studios and indie developers because they don't really have a choice but to listen to the player base. If they don't, then they risk alienating this small potential audience that they could be getting if they had just done what the players wanted. Some of these Western AAA studios could take a page or 2 or 3 out of their Eastern counterparts because it seems like what they're doing right now is working, which is just making good games that people find interesting. I know it might seem like the only purpose of this video is just only to glaze China and say that Western games bad, but that's not the reason. Far from it. I want all games to be good. It's just that I feel like there's been a giant disconnect between what gamers want from video games and what the developers actually provide in them. It's been a huge problem for quite some time now, and the results have always been the same. There would be a new game that launches, people would play it for a bit and voice their criticisms because they truly want the game to improve, and a lot of the time they would just fall on deaf ears. Meanwhile, these Chinese developers come out of nowhere from overseas to deliver some random game based off an esoteric Chinese folklore that's been told for centuries, and it becomes one of the best titles that we've gotten in years. Or they come out with another random anime mobile game gacha slop that somehow makes $1 bajillion within the first week of launching overseas. The reason why China is taking over the video game industry is because they're giving players exactly what they want. That's it. There's no secret sauce that they use or any special knowledge that they have. It's just basic supply and demand. But that's just me. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down below and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content in the future. See ya.